The 67's record in 1976-77 doesn't stand out. The team finished the season 38-23-5, good for the division crown, but well behind St. Catharines and London, the league leaders in the West.
We were a team that got a lot better as the season went on, as Brian Kilrea's teams have a habit of doing. I think we may have lost 1 or 2 games in our last 20.
That team had 4 lines and they were deep, and they were all offensive. And they could play any way you wanted.
After defeating Sault Ste. Marie and Kingston in the opening rounds, the 67s met the favored London Knights for the J. Ross Robertson Cup.
I think when that final series started, although they had a lot more points than us in the regular season, we were probably at least as good as them over the last two months.
That was a great rivalry because at the time, our owner was Howard Darwin, and he had both teams. And I know during the course of the year we'd play, and it was called for the Darwin Cup. And it was the team that had the most points.
The Knights couldn't contain the 67s. The series was over in 6 games, with the 67s winning the first OHA championship in the team's history. In the final game at the Civic Center, the 67s humbled the Knights 8-0.
To beat that team 8-0, they were too good a team, but we were high that night, and we went out and we deserved the 8.
We got everything out of everything we had on that team, so it wasn't just a, you know, by chance or by luck that we got there. So it was really satisfying, and as I say, to do it in your hometown was pretty special.
With the win, the 67s advanced to the Memorial Cup, where they met the New Westminster Bruins in the final. Trailing 5-2 in the third, the 67s rallied, but a late goal by the Bruins ended the 67s' hopes of a Memorial Cup championship.
It was a terrific game, and we came back and really outplayed New Westminster in the third period, tied the game up 5-5.
We were down to the last 5 minutes, and it was tied. They rolled us off a little too early when they had it 5-2. We came back 5-5.
But the unfortunate thing was they scored a late goal to win it. We
enjoyed that experience, and Brian allowed us to enjoy that experience when we were in Vancouver, both on and off the ice, and nothing changed when we got there. It was a close group, and I look back at that experience, and it was, yeah, we would have loved to have won it, but we did, I think, get everything out of that hockey team, and it came down to 1 goal, and yeah, gotta tip your hat to New West. It was a pretty good hockey team.
Coming up, we reveal the greatest moment in the history of the Ottawa 67s. After his debut as a 14-year-old in 1967, Denis Potvin embarked on a remarkable junior hockey career. In his OHL 6 seasons, he was named the league's top defenseman twice, and 3 times was named an All-Star. And in March of 1973, he zeroed in on a record held by one of hockey's all-time greats.
Potvin was more of an all-round player, and when you consider Potvin, the size of him and the defensive type player he was, and just the physicalness of the young man. You didn't look on it the same way. If this was a scoring record, excellent. But he was more than just an offensive player.
Following his final year in Ottawa, Potvin was taken first overall by the New York Islanders in the NHL draft. In 1980, he reached the summit of the hockey world. He captained the Stanley Cup champions.
When I took the Stanley Cup, I paraded around, and my visions of Jean Beliveau as my hero growing up, you know, skating with Montreal for him with the Stanley Cup was very vivid in my mind. Then I handed it over to Clark Gillies, and then the procession started. When we got back into the dressing room, you know, I partied and enjoyed everything as much as I could, and then there's an overwhelming feeling of emotion that hit me, and I actually had to leave the room, and I went into the hockey stick room and closed the door and just started crying. I mean, it was just a culmination of all the emotions that we have as Canadian children growing up in hockey and envisioning winning a Stanley Cup. It all happened in that one moment, and it was powerful.
By the time Potvin's career was over, he would have an impressive resume. He was the NHL's first 1,000-point defenseman, enjoyed 9 trips to the All-Star game, won 3 Norris Trophies and 4 Stanley Cups. In 1991, Potvin became the first Ottawa 67s player to be inducted into the Hockey Hall of Fame.
It's nice to walk away, it's nice to be there, it's nice to have it. I just think that it's not as great as winning the Stanley Cup or my first day in the NHL.
No forward in the history of the Ottawa 67s had a bigger impact than Bobby Smith.
Well, probably the greatest forward I ever coached.
The best junior hockey player I ever saw.
Even as a peewee, he was a big guy, he had great range, but he was a student of the game, and great determination and drive. He wanted to be a great player, but he was probably one of the smartest players I've ever seen.
On March 25, 1978, Smith entered the record books. He scored a goal and added 3 assists as the 67s defeated the London Knights 5-3. With those 4 points, he broke the OHL record for most points in a season. But despite his great campaign, he had to fight to win the league's scoring title. At the end of the year, his 192 points were 10 clear of his closest rival, Wayne Gretzky.
There's no question in my mind that having Wayne Gretzky a few points ahead of me or tied with me or a few points behind me all season long pushed me every game to try and be as offensively productive as I could.
I can still remember a pass he made to Steve Payne when he was in the Civic Center in Ottawa. It was a backhand pass. Bobby was just passing our blue line, and he threw a pass kind of almost like a quarterback in football, where he lofted the puck and it actually went over top of the shoulder of Steve Payne and then fell right into position, right on Payne's stick. He goes in for a breakaway. Those types of plays were incredible, and Bobby just did it game after game.
When you have to pick the best player and you've been around 30 years, there's a lot of good players that we've been lucky enough to have here in Ottawa. And Bobby still emerges as #1. His record still stands, 192 points.
Indeed, Smith's record has stood the test of time. And following his final season with the 67s, he embarked on a successful NHL career. In 1986, he won the Stanley Cup as a member of the Montreal Canadiens. After his playing career was complete, Smith was honored by the 67s when the team retired his number 15.